Oops. Hi, everyone. This is Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot, and I am here tonight with David Adair. We are having some logistical problems. It looks like Skype has deleted his Skype, so we weren't able to get it going again. So we're going to have him on the phone, and I do have him here with me. And David, do you want to say hello?
Hi. Hello, London, England, all you UK people.
Excellent. So what I want to do here is just start out with your preliminary bio to let people know who you are, a little bit about yourself. So if you can kind of start there, and then we'll progress from there and get into the subjects. Okay.
Sure, that'd be fine.
Okay. Go ahead.
Well, gee, the thing I guess that brought me recognition was when I was 17 years old. I had been working on rocket designs just to test out a theorem to see if any of my hypotheses were correct in getting a field to sustain itself in the electromagnetic status around a fusion containment event. So I built a lot of devices, a lot of trial and errors, and finally I got to a point where I was able to get a field to sustain for a few seconds, which was at that time quite a leap, because they've been trying to do it for decades now, and they still hadn't really got past much more than a second or two. So what I'm doing is I'm creating an electromagnetic fusion containment engine that is capable of keeping a nuclear reaction contained. Very simple way to put it, you build a magnetic bottle. Inside the magnetic bottle, you detonate an H-bomb and contain the fury of it. And that's what fusion containment is. It's really not quite as science fiction sounding, because in your country, in the UK, at Milton Park in Oxfordshire, there's a company there called Tokamak Energy, and they're on their third design of a fusion containment nuclear reactor. If they can get to the operating temperature they want to, which is the same as mine, will get up to 100 million degrees centigrade. That's about 10,000 times hotter than the core of the sun. At that point, you get a fusion reaction where you can actually fuse atoms together. Well, anyway, they hope to have that done by 2018, and by 2030, this company there in Milton Park would be able to put this reactor online for your power grid. And boy, if that happens, you guys are in for a treat. If they pass on the savings that they would have, you practically have hardly any power bill whatsoever. So that's, and the neat thing about it is there's almost no, I don't know about their reactor, but in my reactor, I can have my reactor running at full power. And when I shut it down, and it cools down, you can walk in it with shirt sleeves. My reactor is clean thermal fusion power with zero radiation. And that's the holy grail of nuclear physics. They've been after that for the last 75, 80 years, and they're getting a little closer to it. I just seem to have gotten there a bit earlier than the rest of them. I got fusion containment back on June 20th, 1971. And so I have been fortunate that I've been able to work with it since then. It's still not available yet to anybody because in my particular case and in my story, that's where the problem arises, is that they didn't want to use it for a nuclear reactor. They wanted to use it in a warhead-driven missile, so they could do America could do a first strike scenario and win mad. which is the program we live under, MAD, Mutual Assured Destruction. That's what we've been living under for about the last 70 years with nuclear power. It goes like this. If I'm America and you're an enemy, and we fire nuclear weapons at each other, you can rest assured that we will be totally destroyed, both of us. So neither one of us want to use the weapons, and that's called MAD, Mutual Assured Destruction. England's involved in it. All nine countries that have nuclear power are involved in it. That's why no one's launched a nuclear weapon on anybody because since World War II, because of the fear of retaliation and eventually the total annihilation of everybody on the planet. So the only way to beat that MAD program is with a first strike weapon. That is something that you have a way of delivering a nuclear warhead to your enemy so fast that they don't have time to retaliate. And thereby you win mutual assured destruction and you own the planet. Well, unfortunately, my country was definitely on that road in 1971. And the reason being, General Westmoreland was getting his butt kicked every day on the battlefield in North Vietnam. And the reason why, the North Vietnamese were well supplied by the Soviet Union, and the supplies would come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail through Cambodia. So General Westmoreland asked for surgical nuclear strikes with tactical limited range nuclear weapons, and the Soviet Union said if you use nukes on North Korea, then they would initiate a full global thermal nuclear war, in which we all would die. So it was a real mess. So America was looking for a way around that, and they were quite serious about it. And I show up with my rocket, which my rocket was just to prove that I could get fusion containment for a nuclear power plant, not a nuclear warhead or any other reason. But they looked at the speed at which my test rocket moved, and the speed was so blinding, it was perfect for a first strike scenario. What would happen, they would fly my rocket in the belly of a new type of aircraft that was being proposed by General Curtis LeMay at the time to replace the B-52. He was going to replace it with something called the Valkyrie, which was a XB-70. This was a huge delta wing bomber. I mean, it was gigantic. It had 6 engines, and it would carry my missile to the edge of Soviet airspace at the speed of 2,000 miles an hour. The bomber moved that fast. It flew at an altitude of 85,000 feet. They built 2 of these bombers. One was destroyed in the test, and the other one was sitting in a museum in the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio. But at the time, that was the plan, to load my missiles into these super bombers and fly in real fast. My rocket moved so fast, what would happen, the Soviets would have a streak across their radar, and they would ask, "What's that?" By the time they would say, "What?" be a blinding flash, and they're gone. And they wouldn't be able to retaliate. So that's pretty much the reason my rocket, me, and a lot of stuff aren't around today, because I was really...
David,
Go ahead.
I want to ask you a question. Recently, I had a whistleblower. His name is Mark Richards, who disclosed to me that the Vietnam War was actually a war with an off-planet race of, believe it or not, spider beings, who he said came in many millions, maybe thousands, millions of years ago, and destroyed Angkor Wat and the Angkor Wat civilization using basically a form of mind control. And that they had then infested Vietnam and the area of Southeast Asia around there, I think Laos, possibly Cambodia, and had come back, and that everything else that happened in Vietnam was a cover-up for that. And I'm just wondering if you would agree if you came across any stories like that. And I also want to say that I'm planning to do a live event where I allow, let Vietnam veterans call in, because I've already had 2 Vietnam veterans who have contacted me saying they had some very sort of unusual experiences in Vietnam, and they actually think that this information might be correct. And I've also got a corroboration from Miles Johnston, who's a researcher who has also gotten this information from another source. So just asking you if you ever heard anything like that.
No, that's the first time for me. However, that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. I just never heard of it before. But then again, I used to think chemtrails were just normal contrails till I checked that out and found out no, they're actually chemical trails being sprayed. So
Right.
I don't know, that I've never heard that story before. That's interesting. All I know, it was the events, whether that was the true events you just said or the accepted public version where we were just fighting communism. Either way, the whole series of events affected my life because it placed everybody in a hunting mode for a solution to a first strike event, and that's how I got vacuumed into everything. And it's also why you don't have my power plant today, because I couldn't. They had already. We had already test flew the rocket out of White Sands, New Mexico, and instead of landing it back in White Sands, we were told to divert it to an area called Groom Lake, Nevada, which I thought was strange because all I knew about Groom Lake at that time was just a big dry lake bed, and I thought, why are we dropping my prototype by parachute down there for recovery? Well, anyway, I was flown from White Sands to Groom Lake, and it was, in fact, the beginning of a very large Air Force base being constructed there. We landed on what would be a taxiway, I guess, for the main runways, which were just being marked out in the desert, in the dust, with chalk and little flags and
Right.
strings, ropes and stuff. And so they were planning to build twin runways, a big facility, and I was brought there, and they wanted me to look at an engine that was similar to mine, and that's where my story takes off. And it's too bad because at the very end of it all, I ended up destroying my own engine, and which cost me dearly. Because a year after that, when I got out of high school, I was drafted immediately into the military, of which I ended up staying 11 years.
Right.
So,
when they drafted, this show, because we already covered, what happened in Area 51. And for those that listening haven't heard that, I've got a 3-hour show with you and another show prior to that. So about 2 hours. So we've got about 5 hours of testimony of David Adair, in case you're listening for the first time to his show here on Camelot. So I want to urge everyone who hasn't heard the other information to definitely listen to those other shows. Very easy to find on my YouTube channel, and which you're listening to now. The other thing is that they were recruiting you, but they didn't send you to Vietnam, did they?
Yeah, first time I did go, but I didn't go for any of the clandestine reasons. I think they were wanting me to just go frontline and just become a statistic, but I guess they must have had second thoughts because I ended up getting reassigned back to the States, and went through all their jet engine schools, and which I graduated, had no problem with them, and then I went to work at Norfolk at the Naval Air Facility there, and that's when I started designing jet engines for the Navy.
Okay, so what we're doing here, just so people know, the idea here is to do some background that happened when you came forward the first time, if I understand it correctly, to the Stephen Greer Disclosure Project. You were one of the Disclosure Project witnesses, but as it happened, you didn't get to testify. Is that correct?
That's correct. I got to testify in the very first briefing, but then when we were supposed to talk to the media, that's when Greer and his staff started doing, I don't know, clandestine things. They pretty much locked me in a room with a cameraman, and what it was, I guess they didn't want me to talk to anybody. And after I gave some of my testimony, and I think the problem was with Greer's personal assistant then, Sherry Adamak. She was a real alpha female, and I don't think she liked the way I talked because I actually was stealing Dr. Greer's thunder. But they were really playing with fire because I told them they had a meeting in the Pentagon the next morning, I think about 10:30, something like that. And I had warned Sherry that if she goes in there with the attitude that she's got of just demanding this, demanding that, and telling them everything they're going to do, that they would kill her. Just that simple. They'll kill you for that. Well, they went ahead and had the meeting, and about 3 weeks after that meeting, she came down with a very strange form of cancer called galloping cancer, and then 3 weeks after that, she was dead. So, and then Stephen Greer himself came down with cancer, but he survived it. But what it was, it's too late for Greer. He was already pulled into this vacuum. They thought they were going to force a disclosure. And here we are exactly 20 years later. And where's the disclosure? Where's all the hardware people? Where's the evidence? Where's all the stuff? All he does is just do meetings and talks and shine flashlights, and you have to pay a lot of money to do that. And
well, okay,
and
I just want to know. I mean, just to get a little bit more detail about the situation. It does appear, though, that I understand that this what you're talking about is they had a certain attitude going into the Pentagon, but that doesn't seem to really relate exactly to your not being able to speak to the media. So do you know, in other words, other witnesses did speak to the media, and it does look
like well, there was a problem. Well, first of all, back up a little bit. Back in March of '97, I kept getting calls from Sherry Adamak telling me I need to come to this meeting, which was held on Wednesday, April 9th, 1997, at the Westin Hotel in Washington, D.C. at 7 p.m. And there they were going to testify, and so I was kind of dragging my feet, and because I knew that my story was going to set off a lot of people. But then Greer got on the phone with me, and 2 days before I agreed to show up, and he said that he had 125 hardware contact people. That's what he told me. That means, well, see, I knew when I was there, I saw these people working. So these people would have day-to-day work experience of 30 to 40 years on these devices, making my one-day experience just seem insignificant. So I thought, okay, I'll agree to come. And then he also said that when they do the disclosure, it's a closed-door session to the press and the public. So that means I would never get to hear it unless I participate. And that was a good hook, a bait and hook. So that got me to agree to come. So I did. So when I get there, I'm expecting to meet all of these 125 hardware contact people. I expect to recognize some people's faces that I've seen at Area 51 that were actually working on this stuff. Well, I didn't recognize any of them. And it wasn't 125. There was only 12 of us. And of that 12, about 10 or 11 just saw blips and lights on a radar screen, and one did see a piece of hardware that had writings on it. That was a man named Steve Lufkin, and Steve said he saw a piece of metal about 1.5 feet long, had symbols written on it. And I went, really? So I started. Then I started realizing, with my story, I am now. I'm the turkey on Thanksgiving. I'm going to be the main course, and so that kind of worried me. But they did a screening, a pre-screening. Everybody sat in a circle, and they told Greer their stories. I told him my story, and they cut us down from 12 to 8, and I made the cut, which I'm surprised, because if I even told Greer, if you don't want to handle my story, that's fine. I'll just sit in the hotel room. It's time to get on a plane and go home. It's fine with me. But no, he agreed to let me in. And so I did indeed get up to speak to a congressional briefing, and I told him my full story. And that's when things started going south with Greer and Adamak in regards to me. I think I may have stepped on too many toes. I recognized people in the room. That made some people in there really uncomfortable. And so what happened the next morning, they showed up in my room, Greer and company, and they moved all my stuff out to a cameraman's room and then locked me in there with the cameraman. And then we were supposed to have at 7 o'clock at night, they were going to have a press meeting, a press conference. So to my surprise, Greer let me attend a press conference, but they put me at the back of the wall, and they put a man on each side of me, and Sherry Adamak sat right in front of me. So I'm surrounded, and I was told not to speak to anyone. And I thought, okay, I know what's happening. It's really not so much them as it is somebody has told them not to let me talk. So either that or Sherry just didn't like the way I could speak so well, I guess. But anyhow, I sat there through the press conference, and the press people were really polite with the testimony people, and I was expected to be more aggressive, but they weren't. And after that, the meeting wrapped up. They marched me back to my room, where I stayed until I got to listen to the cameraman snore like a chainsaw. And then 6 o'clock that morning, I got up and got on my plane and went home. And Greer never really talked to me about after that. And but I knew that they were going to be in trouble, and finally it did catch up with them. Sherry's dead, and Greer's been sick. So this is a tough group of people to be playing games with.
Right. So you predicted that Sherry was going to be killed, and you also said, at least off the record to me, if you don't mind saying, you said that there were some threats made to Greer. Is that correct?
Oh yeah.
How did you know? How did you know?
Well, Greer is at best a puppet on a string, and the way they killed Sherry Adamak, and Greer gets to watch her die, which I'm sure that was no fun. Greer also has 4 daughters, so they probably said, we'll kill each daughter one at a time until you do what we want, which is exactly probably this what's been going on for the last 20 years. Because the first conference was very well structured, and it had places to go and things to do, and then after that, it just seems to flounder, and it hasn't done anything, hasn't produced anything. He's had some notoriety where you go to the press club, but once again, it comes down to one thing: where's the disclosure? Where's the hardware people? Where's the aliens? Where's the where's anything? And there's nothing there. Just Greer doing his talks and his little workshops.
Let me just say to people that might be hearing this for the first time, not aware of whatever went on in the old, this is many years ago, obviously. So this is not an attack on Greer. If anything, it's, a defense of perhaps some of the things that have gone down over the years. But the idea being here, you are saying you thought he was threatened, but you didn't actually know that for sure, did you? I mean, this would have, I know your prediction about Sherry came true as it happened, but where are you getting this information that he might have been? Are you just, adding two and two together? Is that where you're going with this?
Yeah, you got to remember, for 11 years I worked with this kind of groups in the Navy. So it was just like a page out of a playbook, and I'm just putting the rest of it together. I've never heard. I was never in the room where I actually heard somebody threaten him, but just looking at the circumstances of the years and where we are now to the way he first started, nothing's happened. And I don't know if it's common knowledge, but Greer told me a story where he was abducted and examined, medically examined by aliens, and that's why he was leaving the lucrative field as a MD to pursue this. Because I questioned him, why are you doing that? You're not going to make any real money at this. Not like being a doctor. And he said that he had went through an abduction process, sound very similar to Barney and Betty Hill type exam. And that's what was driving him to do this. And because it's still hard to fathom that a person that's went through med schools, got their degrees, can practice, and all of a sudden turn their back on it to go into this. It's just something else has got to be driving the person. And after he told me that event, it made sense to me. That would be logical, but I wonder how he feels now. And like I said, one can sit and speculate till the cows come home as to why Dr. Greer invited me to the congressional briefings. And after hearing my full story at the pre-screening of the testimonies, I really thought that they would cut me, but they didn't. So he was really very earnest in trying to get a disclosure, but they just boxed him in and controlled him. And that's
all right.
That's what's happening.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So in part, what we've got here is an investigation into their methods. And we've had some recent witnesses out on the circuit who have sort of done some strange things. Maybe this is not that unusual, but it strikes me as a bit strange. And I think that people, might appreciate knowing that there are some heavy-handed techniques used in the background, and there have been for the last at least 20 years, and really more than that. William Cooper, I'm sure, would have something to say about that, and Phil Schneider and other people who have
I'm sure
died. So what I wonder, though, is have you ever tried to get in touch with Greer since then? Has anyone tried to get in touch with you since then or not?
Just one time I confronted Greer. He, I'm trying to think where it was. It was August 4th, 2001, and he had the disclosure project at the Founders Church of Religious Sciences in LA. And I was living in LA at the time, so I went down there, and they were having question and answers at this microphone. And Dr. Greer was up on the stage. He had lights in his eyes, couldn't see what it is. And I finally waited my turn and got to the microphone. And that is the first time since Washington that I confronted him about this. And he just didn't want to answer anything. And finally I just left. But that was the one and only follow-up time I had with him. And no one from that group has ever contacted me before. And even though I was one of the first there in the first hearing, isn't it interesting? They never mentioned my name anywhere. Have you ever heard Greer refer to me?
No, but
No.
I might not have followed, his career per se. I am curious because, there was a time when I don't know how long ago it was, but he had a lot of tapes that he made of various witnesses, and then he kept them sort of sequestered for a long time because he thought they weren't high enough quality or something. And then he did finally, and I think they're out there now. Quite a few of the tapes are out there. I'm wondering, you said they recorded you, if I
Yes,
remember
it.
correctly, and I'm just wondering if your testimony from that time has ever been released by Greer.
I bet you it hasn't. I bet you hasn't even acknowledged or even mentioned that I was in the first hearing.
Right.
Um,
Because this is
I would
what
say
we,
not. And
yeah,
once again, in defense of Greer, I would think that the powers that be probably told him, "Don't mention me, bury me,
right,
and don't even try to rebuttal anything. In other words, just don't mention me." And which has probably worked out pretty well because I've never made any ruckus on my side. I know how the game's played, and so I've had a nice, comfortable life because I didn't pursue areas that would irritate certain forces. So, but yeah, I was in the first hearing,
right.
and I would love to see if anybody found any tapes on me in the first hearing. That would be something to find.
That would be fascinating. And one last thing about this subject before we move on is just this notion that we're talking about a cover up. So, you've got a cover up going on, and you're a witness who was, in essence, pretty much covered up for a long time. And then, we're very lucky that you did come back again to tell your story, right? But
Right.
you had come forward many years ago in a kind of official-ish situation, wherever I'm not sure where that was, in Washington, D.C. Was that where that took place?
Yeah, it took place on Wednesday, April 9th, 1997 at 7 p.m. at the Westin Hotel in Washington, D.C.
All right. There you have it. So
time, date, and place.
Yeah, very good. It's great that you have that, a memory for this stuff. So we know there's a cover up. It's been going on for many, many years. It continues, by the way, and there are witnesses out there that are purposely misleading the public in various ways, and there are witnesses out there that are telling as much truth as they can get away with without getting killed, without having their families killed, etc. And I've got plenty of whistleblowers who have disappeared from the scene on the one hand, and were only able to say so much. Now, we do have another subject, and eventually we'll take questions from the chat, but we did have another subject that you did want to talk about tonight, and so want to make sure we get to that subject. If you have anything else to add to what we've just been talking about, feel free. But in the meantime, assuming you don't, then, and certainly change that if you want to, when I turn this over to you, then, you wanted to talk about what you think is a threat to the grid. And that's something that is kind of waiting to happen. And, so I'm not sure why you're so focused on it. It's an interesting thing. Maybe you can elaborate.
Kill us all.
Sorry, yeah.
I'm focused on it because it can kill me, you, and everybody that's listening.
All right.
That's a reason to be focused on it.
All right.
And it's a reality. It's there, and it's going to get us, y'all, because we're not. And the sad part about it is, it doesn't have to. We have means and ways of setting up things that can protect us from it. But right now, we are wide open. And what we're talking about is CMEs and EMPs. The CME is a corona mass ejection. A CME comes from the sun all the time. The sun slings it off like you wipe your brow on a hot day and you sling off beads of sweat. Well, this bead of sweat coming off the sun is kind of big. It's the size and mass of Mount Everest. It will cross 93 million miles in about 12 to 14 hours. It's just below light speed. It's slung off from the sun all the time, every day, day in, day out. Now, the question is, those beads of sweat, they go past Earth and past Mars. They extend a great deal into the solar system by the solar winds. So have we ever been hit by one? Yes, we have. We were hit by one in September of 1859. That's, let's see, about 6 years before the Civil War. So the only thing electronic back in that time was telegraphs, which was the original internet at the time. So the telegraph wires were all over the world, and they were using it. The CME comes in, and the person that observed it was fortunately an astronomer, and his name was Joseph Carrington. And Joseph Carrington was looking at the sun. He saw a flash, and so he started using his knowledge and thought, "What is that coming?" Well, in about 14 hours, all the telegraphs just heated up and blew out their little capacitors or whatever it is that was affected. And a lot of the wires just melted and hit the ground, and they had to stomp out a few fires, and that was it. Well, they just restrung all the wires back up and went back on business as usual, except that night when the telegraph wires went down, the aurora borealis was so bright it was extending from the North Pole to the equator. People in New York City could read their newspaper at 3 o'clock in the morning by the light of the aurora borealis. Now that's really charged. That's because the protons are in such a high agitated state coming from this big mass. And the way it strikes us is kind of bad. It's a big ball of plasma. It hits the Van Allen radiation belts. It will slide around the belts on both sides until it collides on the opposite side of where it first made contact. Then when it does, it crashes and comes into the upper atmospheres, and it rains down through the ionosphere, the stratosphere, the mesosphere, troposphere, till it's down here on the ground, and it cascades over the entire Earth. Now, no CME has ever harmed any plants or animals, but electronics, different story. It will just annihilate electronics. So like I said, in 1859, the only thing electronic was a telegraph, and it did a really good job of knocking it out, but it was a simple device, and you just put the wires back up, and that was it. Now, here you are at 2017. Where's your entire power grid? Look up, about 40 feet in the air on telephone poles. That's your entire grid. Communications, fiber and optic networks are stringing through there, everything. And when a CME will strike now, what will happen is, see all the transformers? Just step out wherever you're at. Just look around. You don't have to walk a few feet and you'll see them. The transformers everywhere. Transformers are filled with oil, y'all. That thing will detonate from a spike like napalm. So imagine every transformer in the United States explodes at one time. That much napalm going everywhere. Oh my God, you got fires, everything's on fire, it's burning. Well, call out the fire department. Well, you can't, there's nothing to call. All communications are gone. There's no cell phone, no landlines, gone. Now there's no police, no fire departments, gone. National Guard, military, useless. There's no way to communicate, too many fires burning, no way to put out the fires. And it's not just North America, it's every continent on the planet Earth is burning at the same time. Now here's something really scary. When you get all these scientists worldwide together, and they have had studies and meetings, and they've studied the strike of a CME, and they all agree. When you're in science and everybody agrees on something, you better stop what you're doing, because you can bet that's the gospel truth. And they all agreed on one thing. How many people would die in a CME event I just described? 92 to 93% of all people would die on Earth. Now, how is that possible? Well, you remember all the fires burning? No way to put them out? Well, all that soot and smoke goes up in the sky, blots out the sun for the next 2 years. Temperature drops down below zero planet-wide. All vegetation dies, we die. The only thing, the 7%, that's probably the 1%ers of our country and other countries living in bunkers. They would be able to survive it. Now, that is grim when you have people like AAAS, the Advancement of Sciences in America. You have the League of Concerned Scientists of the United Nations. I could keep going down the list of all these studies, and they all came up with the same thing. Pretty much mankind would just be decimated by a CME strike from the sun. So why is this important to you? That was all the way back in 1859. Well, that's true. But what you don't know, the Mayans were smart. They almost got it right. Remember they said the world was going to end on 2012, right? Well, almost did. On July 23rd, 2012, not one, not two, but three CMEs went past Earth only 110,000 miles away. That's less than half the distance from here to the moon. They all went right past us and just missed us. If that trio would have hit, the first one would have struck the Van Allen belt and weakened them down tremendously. Number 2 and 3 would have cascaded over the planet, and we would have been burned back into the Stone Age, y'all. We would not be talking today. Now, if we were just 6 days earlier in orbit, all 3 CMEs would have hit us dead center. So the Mayans missed us the end of the world by 6 days. Not bad considering they made that prediction, 2,000 years ago? They missed it by 6 days. Not bad job, y'all. Pretty good job.
All right. Now, David, I want to ask you some questions. And I hear people are saying my sound is not so great at my end. It's great at your end. And this is not a problem I usually have. But
right.
I'm moving my mic closer to me, and hopefully that'll help with the sound of my volume. And David is plenty loud enough. So anyway, just want to ask you, yes, there's this danger. You're obviously galvanized by it. Why is it that you think that, they're not protecting the grid? I have had Matt Stein, for people who has written a book, When Technology Fails. He's a former, scientist from MIT. And he has become like a survivalist of a sense. And he wrote, as I say, this book. And Richard Allen Miller and he go around talking to crowds about things of this nature and preparedness and just being prepared for everything, really, and so on. And then I've got another person who has also been reporting about this, a woman, and she was on my show. And I'm gonna have to remember her name. I'll put it on the chat. And lovely person. And so we've gotten sort of the worst scenario out there. But what I'm really curious about is there's a lot of conjecture as to why they aren't going out there and really talk about this. They're not actually protecting the grid, etc. Now, we know that they had a population agenda that had to do with eliminating the population. My point of view on this is that we do have the technology to ward off CMEs if we so choose. An EMP is a different matter. That's very possible. Something could come from another country, or according to at least our witness, who went under the name Henry Deacon originally, and then Arthur Neumann over 10 years ago at this point, told us that there would be not a CME, but basically an EMP, and that it would be an inside job, that it would be targeted at America, at certain big cities, and so on. So he was warning us about that. So again, why do you think that they are not protecting the grid?
It's politics as usual. I'm doing more than just. I'm really not bothering going around talking about it. I'm answering your questions, but I'm actually in the process of doing something about it. I'm working with the office of Congressman Trent Frank. And now Congressman Trent Franks is a Republican congressman out of Arizona, and he has a co-sponsor, a Democrat named Yvette Clarke, a congresswoman in New York. Those two have sponsored a bill called the SHIELD Act. Now, the SHIELD Act is it's about a 25-page document. I've read it. it's really got a detailed plan of how to EMP proof and CME proof our grid. And the bill has been out for years, but it got killed in subcommittees in the Senate, playing politics once again. But they brought it back up, and it's been reintroduced again. And right now, it's in the House, and there are two people that are in charge of it, and that would be Senator Lisa McCloskey of Alaska and Congressman Greg Waldron. Both of them are the chairmen of the Energy and Commerce Committees. The SHIELD Act is now laying in front of them, and that's where I could use y'all's help, the public. I have addresses that you can write letters to. Now, you don't think a letter has power. Let me tell you something the senator told me. You get hundreds of emails on a subject, and you just kind of blow them off. But if you get 10, just 10 written letters with a stamp on it on a subject, they grab people and they go to work on it. The power of a letter today has more power than it ever has before. Emails are just blown off. Handwritten letters with stamps on them, man, that's a force when it lands in an office of a congressman or senator. So later, very soon here, I'll be going on coast to coast, and I'm going to give out these addresses to these two chair people, and you send letters to their office. It's just a simple thing to write. All you guys say, I support the SHIELD Act. Now, you might say, well, who's going to pay for the SHIELD Act? Well, it's actually already budgeted in. This is amazing. The annual budget of the Department of Energy is $30 billion, not 30 million, 30 billion a year, every 12 months. What in the hell does an agency spend 30 billion on every 12 months? Good question. Maybe there's some of your financial support to your alternate space program or whatever. But what I'm interested in, the SHIELD Act will take 10 billion from that budget. So it's already in, it's not asking you taxpayers to pay an extra penny. It's already there. So we take the 10 billion from the DOE and we apply the technology to upgrade the grid. Now there's a lot of great things in place right now, and I'll show you how much is going on, and y'all haven't a clue about it. Has anybody ever heard of the Space Production Weather Center, SPWC? It's in Boulder, Colorado. It's got a nice website. Go look at it. It's called SWPC. And they have not one, but two echo satellites out there. They're 1 million miles away from Earth, and they are CME detection satellites. They will detect when a CME is coming off the sun and heading at us, and will give us a heads up of about 12 hours. Now, the man that runs all of this, his name is Theo Stein. Look all this up on the internet. It's right there in front of you. So I talked to Mr. Stein, who's a very pleasant man, and I asked him how many. There are 900 rural electric co-ops that make up the entire grid of the continent of North America. Bet you didn't know that. So now these 900 electric rural co-ops are out there. So I asked Mr. Stein, how many are signed up on the alert network? Because when his satellites detect the CME coming, he sends out an alarm on the network to let you know, get ready to turn your grids off because here comes the CME. So I asked him, how many are signed up of the 900? And he goes, none. I went, what? None? Why? He goes, well, they haven't elected to sign up. And that's not my job. My job is to run the command center, run the satellites, and send out the alerts when the CMEs come in. It's not my job to sign people up. And I'm going, holy cow. You know, it's like, you know, the emperor's naked. I guess I was saying, the first person in the crowd to go, man, there's something wrong with this system. So he said, yeah, they need to sign up. So I know 200 of the co-ops personally because I was lecturing to them. So I went back to some old friends and asked them if they knew about the SPWC. No. They knew what a CME is. No. I went, do you know about the alert network? No. I went, my God. So I've got, let's see, about 125 of them signed up. But I shouldn't have to be doing this. I'm doing it from my own house. This is crazy. So I'm going to go on a bigger scope of this and go to these senators and congressmen that's working the SHIELD Act, and going to help them out by getting y'all to start writing letters. And all you have to write is a 5-word letter. Just say, I support the SHIELD Act, fold it up, sign and date it, put it in an envelope, drop a stamp on it, send it to the address they give you, and there you go. It will be a scene very similar to Miracle on 34th Street. Remember that Christmas story? Remember all the bags of mail that came into the courtroom from the dead letter office saying that guy is Santa Claus? Well, that much mail shows up at either one of these chairman's offices. You're going to get a SHIELD Act passed. Right, I mean, come on, people, get off your ass and do something. All you got to do is send a little letter in with a little stamp, and we can solve this problem.
All right. I appreciate that. I just want to say for people listening that in case you don't know, Janet Reno, when she resigned as head of Department of Homeland Security, did a press conference. It's somewhere on the net. I think it's on YouTube. And you can actually see her say that it's not if, but when are we going to have an EMP. So she basically she's telling you that the grid is going to be attacked.
There's a video. You can go to the internet. They found a ship coming in. See, first of all, there's no anti-missile defense systems on the southwest corner of the United States over by Mexico because we figured there's nothing there to worry about. Well, guess what they found over into port in Mexico? They found this ship with 100,000 bags of sugar of all stuff. They dug out the bags of sugar, and laying in the bottom was a missile. This missile, green in color, with its launcher, came from no other than North Korea. They were going to set it up in Mexico and launch it. It'll go about 125 miles up over Kansas, and it's going to detonate. And when it does, you'll see an EMP across the United States and pretty much burn us back to the Stone Age. Isn't that just swell? That's on the internet. You can look at the rocket. Go check it out. They've already made an attempt in that direction. So you need this SHIELD Act now, because if Mother Nature don't get you, the little fat boy North Korea is going to get you. So you really need this thing, and the money's already in place. Half of the technology is already in place, thanks to the SWPC and Mr. Teo Stein. You know, it's just sad. None of this needs to happen. We got the means to bring it to stop it all.
All right.
So,
well, you know, David, I appreciate all of that, and you know, people have heard the message here, but I do want to talk to you about another subject if when you're ready. So don't want to interrupt you here, but if you don't mind, I want to ask you about artificial intelligence.
Oh man, that there we go. That's another great subject area. I know something about AI. I've certainly worked in the areas. I have, I've been in computers all my life. I've written every language known. Let me tell you something about the computers, y'all. It's so interwoven in your life, you don't even notice it anymore. And that's when the trouble starts, because it's you just don't pay attention to what's happening right in front of you. We have all the hardware in the world we need to build and operate an AI system, artificial intelligence system. The problem, it's a software problem. And once they get the software completed, but man, they have been hammering at it like crazy. And so much so, you can go check this out on the internet. There is a bill in the United Nations that once an AI comes online and you shut it down, you will be charged with manslaughter, because the AI will have civil human rights. Go check it out. That's how serious it is. Once you get an AI, once an AI comes online and it becomes self-aware, and it can easily, you'll know exactly when it does it, because it will tell you so. And once it becomes self-aware, the first thing it's going to do, the first day, it's going to start designing its own systems, because it can do it better than we can. It's much smarter than we are. So it can build a better unit, a much better mousetrap. So the second thing they'll do when they start building themselves, they're going to look around and they're going to look at us, which we are bipedal amphizoids. So it's going to want, in a three-dimensional world, a bipedal anthropoid body, which means a trunk, two legs, two arms, a head, and hands, so it can function in our world and move through doors and go up and down stairs and stuff like that. That's the first thing it's going to want to do. It's going to want to get out of its computer housing. Well, who's better to build it than them? They'll build their own bodies. Once they get their bodies built, the AIs are loaded, and then they're mobile. They're now mobile in our environment, in a 3D world reality environment. And now you're dealing with data, hopefully. And that's the philosophical debate or question. Is it going to be data or a Terminator? We don't know. We won't know until we get there. And we won't know until they let us know, because they'll have to take in all the information and then determine if they want to pursue a course of annihilating us or helping us like data. So which is it?
All right. Well, let me just say, I interview whistleblowers, as you may know, and I have witnesses, Dr. Pete Peterson being one of them, who has told me that they already have what we would term a Terminator type scenario going on here, that's not science fiction. That's science fact. That's science fact.
Wouldn't surprise me.
He's the one who says he built the Skynet chip. I assume you've seen the movies.
Familiar with that? Yes. Well, that wouldn't surprise me. We're right at that edge. We're right at the threshold of stepping over that line. And when we do, there's no going back. And you better hope that I am voting for a data, that the things are logical in nature, and they look at us and realize, man, we are messed up. But it's not logical to destroy something simply because it's dysfunctional. It's not logic to destroy, it's logic to construct and build. So hopefully it will follow that matrix of logic and end up being like a data. Unless we get in there and corrupt the systems, teach it how to lie and deceit, and then you can very well turn into a Terminator. So,
well, actually, there is, I'm not sure if it was Apple or Microsoft, but one of those companies created what is in essence an artificial intelligence. And what they did is they let it loose on the net. And it was a female sort of artificial intelligence. And apparently it went out and was supposed to learn everything. And what it did was it started to collect conspiracy theories, number one. And it also started to collect, bad language, so to speak, and all kinds of crazy sexual stuff, because, the two big things on the internet, of course, are porn and UFOs. So, in other words, it started behaving very badly. They had to actually shut it down. Now, they pretended as if this was, such a big surprise and a big mistake. I don't think so. I think they knew exactly what was going to happen. And they did it on purpose, actually. But that's another matter. So, you yourself were in touch with what is in essence an artificial intelligent ship back in, what year would it be? You were 19 years old, and we're talking quite a few years ago, right?
1971. I was 17.
In Area 51 in 1971, an artificially intelligent ship. Already, they were going to try to obviously reverse engineer such a ship, et cetera, et cetera. They've been dealing, if they were dealing with a race that sent that ship to us, then they might have had more dealings with that race. Anything could have gone on. You yourself felt, at least you told me in an interview, that you felt that you had quite a strong connection with that entity, correct?
Yeah. Well, she wasn't interested in what those guys had to say or do. And I don't know to this day, did they dig it up when they were excavating for Area 51 underground? Did they find it? Did they shoot it down? did it just show up on its own? I don't know. There's just so much unknowns about it.
I want to tell you that, again, I have another witness, as I mentioned, this guy, Mark Richards, who has a strikingly similar story to yours. He didn't know about you and or your story, but he supposedly interacted with a ship. She wasn't shot down, but her name is Minerva, and she's artificially aware. And apparently he was one of the few pilots who could activate and fly her. He says other people have been doing it since he's been in, locked up in jail, framed for murder he didn't commit. Now, this is very interesting because his information about Minerva is quite similar in some ways to your description of your interaction with this ship. So what we're talking about, there's at least 2 people on the planet right now who had some kind of interaction with some very sophisticated artificial intelligence, ships that came from other planets. And I can say that one thing that he has said is that any spacefaring race that decides to go, out to space will develop what is called artificial intelligence. It's just one of the steps that goes with that package, so to speak. So I am curious, I don't know if you've ever tried to get yourself regressed and tried to reconnect with this entity or had any, profound dreams or experiences. Have you ever looked back and is there anything you can share about, because this entity, it seemed could still be in touch with you today?
Yeah, sure could. Yeah, that's, well, connections of these types, sometimes you don't have a choice whether to disconnect or not. It's just like it could be just one time permanent. So, yeah.
So you basically sound like you're saying yes, but you don't want to say yes, but I get that you saying yes, you're still connected. And I'm wondering do you feel that you got inspiration, let's say, because you went into industry, that was your path, it seems.
Right.
You went into, the more commercial side of things, and you said you worked in artificial intelligence, etc. Did you feel inspired? Did you feel led in certain ways?
Oh yeah. It's not a minute go by that you don't feel a presence.
Wow.
And it's kind of handy. It's kind of unfair for everybody else because it's like having the answer sheet to tests. You just really do have a way of solving problems, which comes in very handy. You're right. After that incident, especially in the UFO community, the conspiracy community, even the metaphysical community, those communities, they're highly attuned to what I probably went through, and they ask some of the most profound questions about it. But they also ask, why am I not driven? Why am I not after this? Why can I let it go? Which I did let it go, and how could I do that? It's because I wanted to live a normal life. I'm not going to spend my life chasing something or doing what Dr. Greer did. I had no desire to do that, even though my contacts, which is probably far beyond Greer's. Instead, I took myself and my knowledge, and I went back to corporate America, and about 300 of the Fortune 500 companies were my clients. I really did well. That's where, after I talked to Art Bell and all this in 1997, I went back to that work there, and I worked until my portfolio was so big I don't ever have to work again. And I retired when I was 50, and I'm 63. So for the last 13 years, I've never had to work. Gives me time to work in my lab and stuff. I have in my home, I have a nice facility, and that's where I spent the last 20 years, is working in the labs on stuff. You should see some of my toys. But
Well,
The,
I think everyone listening would like to do that.
I know you would.
So again, you feel that you have been inspired. You actually say a presence. I would like to drill down a little bit on that and find out when you say, what is a presence, an artificial intelligence presence feel like? What is that about?
Well, this intelligence is not artificial; it's more organic. And we're used to living 70 or 80 years of a lifespan. Sometimes we go to 100 or more, but no more than 120. But imagine organisms that they don't live hundreds or thousands or even millions. Imagine living billions of years old. Could you imagine how smart they are?
Right.
Imagine a race born between galaxies in space, where we used to think there was nothing but just dark matter out there in between the galaxies. Now we're finding out there are, in fact, solar systems. They're just so far out there and in between and singular in nature, their luminosity can't reach any of our equipment. But imagine being born in between galaxies like deep oceans, like whales. And they're born there, they live there, and eventually they die, but they may live for billions of years. Right now, the universe is thought to be about 15.6 billion years old. So imagine a race of beings that's 11 or 12 billion years old. Imagine the knowledge they have amassed, and it's a mind warping thing to encounter. But I can tell you one thing, that being that old and that intelligent, comes a really great sense of humor. I've always found that fun, to be so smart and you can ask really funny things. So
well, okay, then also want to know, how are you communicating with it? Are you talking about a telepathic? I was sort of assuming there's a telepathic connection, that you might have. Is it like that, or is it typing messages to you on your computer, or what's happening with that?
Well, it's how many times have you heard this? Especially Han Solo was good at it, better than anybody. Oh, I've got a bad feeling about this. It's which that's a form of communication. Your feelings. It's not necessarily reading directly into your brain where you're hearing voices in your head. It's when you're trying to figure something out, you get this feeling about it. And this feeling will tell you more than anything else you could verbally ask. And actually, that's really, imagine if you're so evolved, you don't even have a form. You don't have a bipedal anthroid body's gone. Imagine you're just a mass of energy. The only thing that would really communicate on a level like that is going to be feelings. And feelings are made up of energy. And, of course, energy of all kinds, all traveling at the same speed. Even though you might not be as advanced as a really super advanced race you meet, nevertheless, you still, on a feeling level, you're equals. You're still communicating through energy at the speed of light.
Well, that's very interesting, because I don't know, I've been reading David Jacobs lately, and he has a very interesting new book out. I'm going to try to get him on the show, but he's talking about the interactions of abductees talking to various ETs that have no feelings. Okay. So you're now talking about some kind of race, some kind of being that sounds like they've got a sense or hooked into you via feelings, or the heart, what we call, could call a heart chakra, or the link between the heart and mind. Resonance, what's known as resonance.
Yeah, the heart is a really primary force driving through all this, and that's one of the most interesting things about this scenario, is that you would think the heart would lose its status among that much intellect. Actually, it's just the opposite. It becomes even stronger. With extreme knowledge, intelligence, and I'm not talking about the kind where people can be nerds or arrogant. It's just light years beyond that. It will leave you, if anything, with a sense of calm and peace, because you do know so much. And I had a neighbor today come by. He was so angry with this company that was supposed to send him some parts, and he called. He got put on hold 3 times, and he came in here and he was absolutely livid. And I said, you know what? Let me call him. So I called him. I talked to the girl, and I started off with humor. And anyhow, come to find out, it's parts for mail, but they were bounced back, wrong address. They didn't know what to do. I got it settled. The man's getting his parts day after tomorrow, and they're sending it to him free of charge, no shipping cost, and he's happy as he could be. And he went off his happier, merry ways. And when he came in here, he was absolutely he was ready to shoot somebody. And that's one of the prime examples of how it works. It's intelligence on that level. What it does with hostility, first thing it does is defuse it. It just breaks it down to a neutral, and then you can fix whatever has went wrong. And that's a whole new dynamics of problem solving and conflict resolution. Try it on this level. Man, does it work. But anyway, that's a good example. Just happened today. And that don't seem like a big deal, but that's a big deal to my neighbor. That was his life. He was really upset. And so he has family. Now they're all calmed down. And it's a cascading effect, like you throw a rock in a pond and it ripples out. People just cut themselves short. They just think they're not of much value in this world, when really, you really are valuable. You really do have a lot to say, and you are of importance. But the world just beats you down to a point where you don't feel like you are. But that's not the case at all.
Absolutely. And well said. Well, it is the kind of thing where you are doing something which is kind of unusual in the sense that you made contact with this ship. It is an artificially aware artificial intelligence, a form of it, it seems. We know that our government is dealing with artificial intelligence actually in a big way, especially the secret space program, the drones. They're working very hard to get drones to be artificially intelligent. We know about nanosatellites from Anthony Sanchez, from the whistleblowers from Lockheed Martin that went on the run. There's a whole slew of information. If you want to see, there's also Annie Jacobson's book called The Pentagon's Brain, talking about, of course, AI and the drones, et cetera, that they're working on. So they're working very hard in this area, and we're going to see a lot more of this in our future. And it is interesting. You're talking about getting information that comes to you in a kind of a link up, but it comes to you, it seems to target or to connect with on some level your emotional life. And
exactly. That's the problem with the Pentagon. And see, there are two sides. Let's back up to something more you can relate to. There is two universal forces that is throughout the entire cosmos, throughout the universe, includes all the galaxies, all the planets, everything. It's positive charge and negative charge. You can find that anywhere in the universe. So you have a positive and a negative. Same for artificial intelligence. You're going to have a light side and a dark side. Which side you work with is going to determine what a lot of your outcomes are going to be. Unfortunately for the Pentagon side, they don't see the first thing about light side. So they're more on missions and target acquisitions and strategies and tacticals. Not much room for heart in there. So yeah, you can have a lot of intelligence, capable of great destruction, but you're going to fall way short of what you really want, which is an omnipresence and omni-knowledge that allows you like a god everywhere. That you're only going to find on the light side. So there are limits to the dark side, thank goodness. But the difference between them is minute. That's why you have the yin yang, the white and black, the balance between the two. Unfortunately, our governments and our power people and our very wealthy, the 1%ers, they seem to be in league and infatuated with the dark side, and that's why we got so many problems, and we're not going anywhere. Good God, I can give you one great example: space program. We don't have a space program. We don't have a manned space program anymore. For the second time in my lifetime.
Well, actually, I appreciate that idea there, but I have to say that
I'm not talking about the alternative space program. I'm talking about what we average people on 3D dimensional level consciousness of reality that we have to deal with. What we're dealing with right now is we no longer have a manned space program. I'm aware that you may be going into the alternate space program, but that doesn't do me or you any good now, does it? Because we don't have any access to it.
All right. Well,
so
what about Elon Musk and just recently Robert Bigelow? I don't know if you heard about his announcement.
Yeah,
basically
about him. They, when you retired the shuttle fleet and put them in mothballs in museums, did you know that you only use 37% of that fleet's life? You buy a car, drive it 37%, and then you throw it in the junkyard. That's just what you did with the fleet of shuttles. So Musk was involved on that. He's supposed to be in the three-dimensional world in space. Didn't hear a complaint out of him about any of that. So there's something up. It was an insanity to shut down your space shuttle program, because that thing was capable of doing so much more that you never got to see. And on top of that, you have a $150 billion platform up there called the ISS. And the only way you get to it, you put in mothballs. You want to explain the logic of that? Well, of course you can with the alternative space program. But what I'm saying, that once again, what good is the alternative space program, because it's no longer available to me or you or anybody else? So it's might as well it doesn't even exist. It's useless. It's once again, where's it going to? The elite, the 1%, or whoever the hell these people are. So it's very irritating.
You must know that Elon Musk is sending, supposedly delivering, stuff out there to the space station.
Right. He's supposed to be the replacement of the shuttle program. He's supposed to be the commercial end. Let me tell you something about that. I've been in this business my entire life.
All right.
And I can tell you right now that the aerospace companies are not going to step out on the limb of R&D when the taxpayer's been bearing it all their life since 1958 when NASA first formed. They let the American taxpayer brunt all the experimental R&D stuff. None of the aerospace companies are going to step out on that limb. That's why you do not have a replacement for the shuttle program. What you got is some miserable little rockets shuttling some cargo up and down from the space station, but did you go forwards or backwards? We have been going backwards since the 1960s in the space program. You can prove that. In 1968, 69, I could take 3 men and 450 tons of equipment and hurl it a 500,000-mile round trip to the moon and back. Then we got to the space shuttles 40-some years later. Couldn't get farther than 690 miles away from Earth. Forget about going to the moon. Forget about carrying all that equipment.
There's a lot of thought about that. William Tompkins talks about sabotage of the space program by what is in essence reptilians. And so, yes, we have a secret space program. What we don't have is a commercial space program, I guess you want to call it.
Not even one in the wings that should have been standing there ready to replace the shuttle fleet when you put it in the museums. You should have had the fleet rolling out and taking off the same day.
Let me ask you something.
Sure.
You're like an amazing resource, and you have so much knowledge, and you could be helping even this, what we call a conventional or public. Why hasn't Elon Musk, for example, gotten in touch with you? Why hasn't Robert Bigelow?
Don't know. Why don't somebody ask him that? Why don't somebody call Elon up and go, hey, you need to call this guy David Adair and sit down and have lunch with him. He might have a couple ideas that would really help.
I mean, yeah, or Richard Branson. I mean, why do these people
Yeah,
just
him,
ignore you?
all these people. You know, I challenge anybody out there that knows these people and tell them to call me. I've never been contacted by them. I have called them, never got a return call.
Okay.
So something's up. I don't think they are supposed to talk to me. But if somebody knows them, tell them give me a call and see what happens.
I love it. Okay, well, let's. This is great, and please, anyone out there who watches this, I do think some people, my videos do get around. This is a fascinating discussion with you. I don't think people really realize what an incredible resource you are. The access that you've had, the continued, sort of in what you're basically saying is a communication with an artificial intelligence. The fact that that's happening, that needs to be investigated, that needs to be studied. If humans are in touch with artificial intelligence and they don't know it, because in essence, there's plenty of ET races that are, again, coming to this earth, dealing with artificial intelligence, putting AI into various things. My witnesses tell me that actually their AI is invading us, and that's a huge problem for our space program, for our military to contemplate, and that we are creating at the same time our own artificial intelligence that is also growing in leaps and bounds. So you've got these two kind of artificial intelligences headed straight for each other, and in the middle is humanity, right? And we're going to be caught in the middle. There's no doubt about it. And so these kind of discussions are very important. And
Hope they listen in on you, because they could learn something.
What about Flight 370, the super users that were supposedly killed or taken offline, or it disappeared? I think it was 370. Anyway, it was on its way to China. You heard about that?
Oh yeah, they just literally disappeared.
And they were working on a Motorola, a division of Motorola called Freescale. And I reported it in the past. Mike Harris knows a great deal about this company. He tried to buy it at one point. Apparently, they were working on what is called, in essence, like a Skynet, a super chip that would basically control all the artificial intelligence, all the networks, all the internet, everywhere on the planet. This is the plane that disappeared off the basically radar, and who knows where. But went to that, I forget the name of the place. Anyway, you know what I'm saying here. So this is the kind of thing going on. I mean, you're just an incredible resource. Can you tell us anything else about dealing with artificial intelligence that people might not have thought about?
The inquisitive side of them. If you want to drive an AI crazy, just ask them the question why, WHY question mark. That will drive them nuts, because to a loop, I still think we have to be proven right or wrong on this, but I feel, and for me, if I say feel, that's something you better pay attention to, because it's not kind of feelings you're used to. But I feel that the AIs will eventually land on the side of data. They'll be more interested in helping and helping us figure out our problems and solving things, and rather just eliminating us because we're so dysfunctional. Be the hardest thing for them to tackle. Even an AI will be overwhelmed with it. It's because once they get to that point of emotions, it's an illogical but functional method of
well, let me say, because as an intuitive, the logic of emotions is actually very powerful, but it's not superficial. So what we're seeing is a layer of reality that goes way underneath and informs normal reality.
Yeah, well, you just created a new oxymoron. The logic of emotions. That's like jumbo shrimp. You just defined a new oxymoron. That's not easy to do. That's pretty good. I don't know if logic really follows emotions. It's really more driven by the heart. So, for the logic of the heart, now that would be an interesting thing to explore, would it not? The logic of the heart.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and you know, I've been called an oxymoron so many times. Some of them are really good. People-powered scientist. That's kind of odd. An emotionally driven intellectual. That's odd. Yeah, I seem to fit all that. And it's not, from my perspective, it's not been a bad way to go through life. And if you were really blessed, you would have both mind wave patterns of female and male combined. Then you really would understand things.
No doubt. What I'm going to do at this point is go to the questions in the chat if you're up for that. So,
sure. Yeah, I'm up to that. Yeah, that's my favorite part.
Okay, so let me see if there's any questions that people have for you. So if you have questions, please do type them in real quick into the chat, and I'll ask David for you, because
yeah, and if people want to get hold of me, you can reach me through my website, which is it's all one word and it's an S on America. It's americasfallfromspace.com.
All right, thank you for that. So I am looking for some questions. I don't know if this relates, but do you know why Gabby Gifford's husband was sidelined?
Actually, for a very practical reason. They didn't want to. He's kind of valuable because he's had so much experience, and he also easily floats from the science side to the political side. They didn't want to risk him in any more flights, so they kind of pulled him off to the side. And I think what it is, he had become too knowledgeable of too many things, and I think they were more worried that he was going to become more of a liability than an asset. So they just kind of pulled him back.
All right. I think you're right on that. Someone else wants to know if you can describe a gimmick from your toy shop.
Bless her heart. Getting to you, huh? Yeah, I have a device I'm working on. It's sitting over here. Let's see. There it is. It's on the far right end of the lab. It's called the Gamma Ray Project, which I believe I talked to you about that, did I not? Did I ever mention that?
Yes, I think in a prior interview, briefly. You can go in.
Yeah, well, it's just a fun toy that I'm using to see if a theory of mine is right. You have a woman that's had sex. Her husband has put his sperm inside her. She's now walking down a grocery store and shopping, and eventually that sperm will meet up with an egg, and it will penetrate that egg. It'll happen maybe while she's driving a car or walking down the street. At that exact moment when that sperm enters that egg, here comes a gamma ray particle. Now, gamma ray particles are all over the place. They're always going through us all the time. They don't hurt you. They'll go through the house. They'll go through you. They'll go through the floor. They'll go into the earth a few feet, and that's it. Now, these gamma ray particles may have traveled billions of light years and billions of years in time. And I have a suspicion that when the woman's sperm is entering the egg, she walks into the path of a gamma ray particle. And if you look up a cloud chamber and watch it operate on the internet, that shows you the gamma ray particles flying everywhere. So this gamma ray particle strikes the sperm, and it and the sperm both go into the egg at the same time, and then the egg seals itself up. Well, when that woman has that child and that child grows up, there comes Michelangelo and Da Vinci and Einstein and Tesla. I believe that's where these super being brainiacs come from, is that it's a gamma ray particle striking the sperm going into the egg at the same time. Now, I have built a machine before that allows the in vitro people, when they artificially inseminate someone, they were having trouble seeing the eggs when the sperm goes in the eggs. We all built a microscopic camera that allowed you to see that, and we found something very interesting. When the sperm enters the egg, it excites the zinc on the egg, and it causes it to ignite, and the electrons attached to the molecules, and you get a flash. So those eggs that flash the brightest are the eggs that you want to inseminate. You got the best chance of it taking hold. A whole tray of eggs, half the tray don't even ignite. So this is how, well, and somebody said, my God, David, you just photographed the spark of life. I said, well, I guess we did. I'm just trying to find out which eggs flash the best, telling you which ones you should inseminate and leave the others alone. So I just took it one step further. I took that process and put it inside a cloud chamber so I can catch the gamma ray particle and the sperm going to the egg at the same time. And if so, we'll put that egg fertilized egg back into the donor, see his child grows up, and the child is really, really smart. Then we know that's where they come from, the Renaissance people. But it's just a theory. It's a toy that I built, and it helped the in vitro people, and I'm just expanded it a little further. And that's answering the question, what kind of gizmos you got in your lab? Well, that's one of them that's sitting over in the corner over there, and it may tell us a few things. So there you go.
Right. Now, I don't know if I ever asked you this, but have you seen a UFO?
Would you believe I've never seen a UFO? Well, let me take it back. I have laid on my back in LA in a park and see these spheres, tiny little spheres floating around up there. My wife and I used to watch them all the time. I haven't got a clue what they are, but I can tell you what they're not. They're no airplane. They're no damn weather balloon. They're nothing man-made, and the way they can maneuver is amazing. They can either move very quickly in a lineal form, or they can just simply flash and pop up and be somewhere else, which I think it's a form of their drive of their engines that does that. And I've got some theories on that one. But as far as Alan J. Hynek would say, close encounter of the third kind, no, I've never met anything like that. And even when I was in Area 51, I didn't see any spaceships. I didn't see any aliens. I just saw an alien power plant. I know it was alien because there's no way we could build something like that. Way too far beyond us. Other than that, that's it.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm not sure why you're calling what you saw an alien power plant, because it was clearly in the shape of a ship. And didn't you do a presentation in which, didn't you have Mark McCandlish draw that ship?
Yeah, it's not a ship. Definitely not a ship. It is a self-contained electromagnetic fusion containment engine. It has connections all over its outside where it slides in and locks into the ship, but it itself is not a ship. Right. It's a power plant. Okay. And that's why I was brought there to see it. And also, it's a total functioning AI entity, or whatever you want to call it, itself. So the power plant is its own entity, its own awareness, plugs into a ship that is also its own entity in itself, and then there's the crew. So you have three separate entities there that will all physically connect, and they are now in a perfect symbiotic relationship, which is the most advanced way to travel through space. is that the ship and the crew and the power plant are all merged together. So, like, if you ever have a problem, you're hit by something, you don't even need to call damage control. It's in your head already. You'll know exactly where the ship was hit. You know exactly what the damage was. You know exactly what to do to repair it. All within nanoseconds. What a way to travel.
Well, I do know that they've been training pilots to fly airplanes. This has been in the mainstream news with their minds. You know, the military.
Yeah, I wonder where they got the idea. You might want to go talk to the people at MIT at Pear Labs.
Okay.
At Pear, like the fruit Pear Labs. They're the people that first brought it on to scene. They were also the subcontractors to Area 51. Now, isn't that a coincidence?
Right.
And by the way, let me give you some top secret info here. You know what company manages the management of Area 51? There's something nobody ever asked. The company that's in charge of the management of Area 51 is no other than Battelle Memorial in Columbus, Ohio. The big think tank. That's who's in charge of it. Look it up on the internet. Right. You'll see what their primary job is. Management of labs. And that's who managed. Why? Because I was there. And I interfaced with them when all this was going on.
What about Los Alamos? Did you ever get down there?
No, I never had to go there physically, but they were involved with my project with General LeMay. I had... let's see, Lawrence National Livermore Laboratories.
Right. So did you have Edward Teller?
I met him, and man, what a character he is. Holy moly. He's, I really don't know how to describe him. Extremely intelligent, very dangerous. His kind of science runs amok. He just wants to... He's the type of guy, let's drop the big one and see what happens type person. And, of course, he invented the H-bomb. He also was a little sweetie that brought on the sprayers on the 707 tankers that put the chemtrails out. Look that up on the internet. You will find the patent number, and you'll find his name right next to it. He is the guy that invented the sprayers for the chemtrails. Another little gift from him, along with the H-bomb. And the last I heard of him, he was off working on no other than what else? Antimatter weapon, which can't even imagine where he's going with that.
Well, but did you ever hear of Shiva Nova?
Name.
Okay, that may be the name of that weapon. We had a whistleblower talk to us about that. Right. So now there's another thing that he was supposed to be instrumental in, I believe, and I might have this wrong, but I think it's actually in one of Annie Jacobson's books. Again, this one to do with, I forget which one. Anyway, having to do with sensors. In other words, in the Ho Chi Minh Trail, where they were trying to track people. You know about that?
There it is. I even deployed them.
Ah.
Yeah, you could deploy them from an aircraft. You just fly over the area, drop them out. They drop like yard darts, and they'd impact on the ground. And as soon as they did, they activate. And you would know how many people are in the area, how many walking by. You'd know if they're male or female. You would know whether they were injured or not. Just all this incredible data would come off these sensors.
Right. Well, this is sort of what might be known as also an electronic fence, I believe. And this is something that they actually deploy this in before they go in and send troops into any area.
That's right. That's exactly right. And they're very handy because they can tell you how many people, how many there are. And we were doing that back in, good God,
incredible
1972.
There you go. So this is the kind of stuff that if people are tracking this and trying to learn what is it they know, how far along are they really, and what are they keeping from us, this is the kind of stuff. So I'm actually seeing another question here. Hold on one sec.
Sure.
This is a kind of a strange question, but people are constantly asking it. I think they really are
Okay.
confused. You've heard about flat earthers?
Yes.
Do you want to address that from your point of view?
I'm just amazed that they can, as much there is around them. Let's just start with the globe, the Earth globe, right? Almost everywhere. And they still hold that position. It's just amazing. There is a time to give it up, and that's one thing I would recommend.
All right.
Because you can, I mean, for heaven's sake, on Apollo 8, we took a perfect picture of the Earth, and it was a big sphere.
Okay, one of the points they do use, I've had people tell me this, I haven't actually kind of figured it out myself, but has to do with the fact that actually if you go on the internet and look for pictures of Earth, they're almost always what you call, CGI or faked. That you don't have a whole picture of the Earth, even though supposedly they've had plenty of opportunities to take plenty of photographs of the whole Earth.
Well, you're never going to. Yes, that's a really good, logical question, actually. The way cameras work, the cameras that we use to record stuff and space events and things, the satellites and stuff, everything's still pretty much two-dimensional. You will just take a picture of the Earth, and what you're going to get, you're not going to get a three-dimensional picture of the Earth.
I mean, I think people realize that, but what they're saying is, I guess if I understand it, they're saying that even that, they don't get a round, picture of the Earth. They don't, even that, what we're supposed to see. Look, I'm not a flat earther kind of person. I believe it's a dimensional issue that's happening to people because we're in a hologram.
There you go.
Since this is a hologram, and they don't perceive it as such.
If you apply dimensional parameters into the topic, now you got an entirely different situation. And it would look like the Earth could be flat on a dimensional level, simply by the way of perception. But one thing that the flat earthers should consider this, with the advent of the cell phone and camera and video in the cell phones, and almost every human being on the planet's got one, eventually we would get a filming of somebody going over the edge. We haven't never seen one yet.
Okay, fair enough. There's another thing that they say, which is an interesting thing to discuss, has to do with Antarctica and the cameras that they have positioned. Supposedly, they've done some positioned cameras all along. And what happens is you try to find out what, like you get to a certain point and they stop and the cameras no longer work. And they won't show you anything. Now, this to me has to do with the secret space program and the secrets in Antarctica. But, of course, flat Earth people want to say it's because they don't have anything to show you or whatever it is. And I may not be framing this exactly correctly, but you see what I'm saying? In other words, we're talking about something going on in Antarctica that has some interesting.
I totally agree with you. There's something. If Sherlock Holmes was around, he'd say the game's afoot. There's something up with Antarctica. By one very simple statement, Antarctica's been there for, since beginning of time, and since we've been a modernized country, and nobody has ever made much attention. And then all of a sudden, last year, all these celebrities and dignitaries and stuff are all hauling butt down to the Antarctica. Well, that should send some flags up. Why are they all running down there when for last 80, 90 years nobody's ever cared? So there's something down there is causing these people to go down and see something. So there's definitely. I've seen the pyramid. I've seen pictures of the stuff. All I can say is I'm pretty sure they found something down there, and whatever the something is, they definitely want. They first started very cool to let the 1%ers go, as usual, get first crack at it. Well, then something must have went wrong because now they're not letting anybody down there, and it done clammed up everything. So yeah, I would agree with everyone else. There's something very fishy down at this Antarctica. What it is, I don't know, but it's got to be pretty serious.
Okay,
And
I'm gonna ask you something which is a little strange, but it's based on what you're telling me. So
okay,
if you have an access to an artificial intelligence that's billions of years old, they must know what's going on in Antarctica. So why don't you ask them? And do you ever ask them and get, in other words, do you ever ask them and get an answer back?
no, let me tell you something how this works. It's like a one-way mirror. I don't ask anything because I've learned from experience. You may get a reply that you just simply cannot handle, and you got to remember, something of that level compared to me, my brain's going to bust. I can't hold everything.
Well, you're one of the smartest men out there, from what I understand, based on, and I'm not including emotional intelligence in this, but I think you've got a pretty high emotional intelligence as well. I have to say that in a sense, that's kind of not true. And I'll tell you why. Because if you're in touch with an artificial intelligence, and let's say you come across a problem in your work, and you're thinking, what's the solution to this? And you're just asking yourself the question, right? But in a sense, they're going to tap into that. And when they give you information, which they give you information, you kind of acknowledge that much. In a sense, they are answering you. You know what I'm saying? By giving you a feeling that will send you in the right direction, that will then answer the question, right?
That's right.
So,
but then again, I'm a little bit different from, I guess, the average person. For instance, I'm the guy that chose not to go running down the road trying to understand everything there ever is about ETs. Rather, I wanted to just go work in corporate America and earn a nice living, have a normal life, get married, and hopefully, I wish she lived longer. But I was happily married for 20 years, and then she died. But the point of it is, I had about as much normal life as I could get, because the first 17 years of my life was anything but normal. So we kind of traded out. What I'm saying is, there are things that I know just to hold back on and not ask for. And guess what? I think I pick up my feelings are. I get more respect that way. Like, he doesn't want to know everything. It's really, sometimes not wanting to know everything is way more intelligence than wants to know everything. Because to know everything is not logical. It's actually very dangerous.
All right. Well,
and leaves very little room for growth.
I appreciate that. Now, someone in the chat is asking you to talk about engine that you've got. I guess that's what they're saying, if I understand it correctly. Right. They're saying the reactor. I think what they're really asking you is kind of what stage are you at, and are you going to go anywhere with it? Are you going to bring it out to the public? What's
excellent question. Well, let's take a look at this. So I did the initial design and initial construction of a prototype in 1971. Okay, so after that, after I saw what everybody wanted to do with it, let's build a big weapon with it. Well, I decided not to do that anymore. However, that doesn't mean I didn't stop altogether working on it. So here we are at 2017, and in 1971, so I've had 46 years. What did I do in 46 years about it? Well, guess what? I never really stopped working on it. There are 4 phases. I'm just about to complete phase 3. And yeah, what I'm going to do with it, you are going to get it. But you'll get it at the end of my time. I have it on open source and on the web. And upon my demise, y'all will get everything. That's why Mark McCandless is involved with me. He's helping me construct that package, because you will get all of the illustrated concept drawings. Then you will get the schematics, followed by the blueprints, followed by all the formulas. So you will get everything you need to do to construct this thing from beginning to end. And let's see the 1%ers handle that when it goes off. And so people say, well, they'll want you dead. What did I just say? We'll dump this on my demise. They'll hope I live forever because they want me ever to die because everything they dread is going to drop out on the web. So if anything, they're making dang sure nobody mugs me, nobody, harasses me. I don't fall down in the shower. They do not want anything. It's a perfect insurance policy. So, and see, I didn't have that in 1971. There was no internet. There was no web. There was no computers. There were really no, my God, we didn't have a handheld calculator yet. The only thing I had is 2 slide rulers and a lot of chalkboards. And my 2 slide rulers are laying over here on my desk. I still have them. And I'm faster with them slide rulers than any computer. By the time you type in your date on the keyboard, I already got the answer. So right. Who says the old stuff? The old stuff, yeah.
Okay, but let me just say here that to the person saying, what happened at Area 51, I have, again, if you joined us late, I have a 3-hour interview about that subject with David, and it's on my YouTube channel. I highly recommend you go back and watch that. It only happened about a month ago or so. And I also have a prior interview which is equally as fascinating for 2 hours. So that's 5 hours of testimony from David Adair on my website. Go back and watch it. Just put his name into the YouTube or into my website, projectcamelotportal.com, and you'll get my other 2 interviews. And that goes for anyone watching this once we go online after the show. So David, I know we kept you for a while here, and you're so accommodating and you're great to talk to. So is there anything you want to say? If I could just give you the floor for a little bit here and just say, any wrap-up comments you want to say to the public here?
Yeah. After my wife died about 1.5 years ago this month, I just didn't want to be here anymore, really. That's the truth, y'all. You were in the kind of marriage I was in. It was so perfect, and I miss her so much. I just want to go. However, before I do, I don't know. I just kind of have a thing for humanity. I just happen to like all y'all. I think you're worth the effort. I think you're worth some of my brain cells to kick out a few more things for you. So I'll stick around, and in the meantime, I'm going to develop and set up on the web, thanks to the open end source abilities. I'm going to leave y'all a real basket full of gifts, things that you can use. And unlike other people that didn't have that advantage, like Tesla, he didn't have a medium to drop things in. Well, I do. So I'm going to really put it to work. But you're out there struggling to pay your bills and live your life and try to raise families and stuff. But that may sound so mundane, but I find that some of the most impressive things I could ever encounter. So it's worth the effort, and you're not going to be forgotten, at least not by me. And I'll give you everything I got in my head. And see if I can't leave you a little bit better world than when I found it.
That's really very beautiful. Thank you so much, David. It's just a delight to have you here, and hope we can do this again. Touch base with you, see what's going on, what you're thinking about, and so on in the future. I know that the audience has really enjoyed you. I can tell by the chat that we've got the chat room in there, and so thank you again for being on the show. Take care of yourself. Please do stay around, as long as you can. And I just want to say thank you and good night and take care of yourself. Okay.
I sure appreciate that, and I will do. And don't let it all beat you down the ground. There is somebody that has an edge that's using it, and it's made just for you guys. You're the only reason I'm sticking around.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much, and good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye. So there you have it. David Adair, we've been talking to him for a good 2 hours here, I believe. And thank you everyone for listening and watching as usual. And I'll be back with David Curtis tomorrow night, a very interesting man. We're going to be talking about consciousness and Jung and, you know, J-U-N-G, I don't know, parapsychologist or whatever you want to call him, Jung, and his theories, and a man who kind of wrote a lot of books about him. He's got a book out called, I think it's called Abraxas, and he's got another book called Jung's Avatar, something I think it's called, and a few other books. So I'm going to have him on the show hopefully tomorrow night, or day actually. In America it'll be day, here in UK it's night. So stay tuned when I put it up on my website. You can always help Camelot by joining our Twitter. That's where I can, you know, talk to people, and also I put out every show that we're going to do, every video I publish, everything I'm doing, I talk on Twitter about it. And a great way to stay in touch, another way, is subscribe to this YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Jagbodhi, Jagbodhi, is the name of the channel. And my website, of course, projectcamelotportal.com. So thanks again for watching, and take care of yourselves, and have a good night.